Tucker Carlson posted his much-hyped interview on Twitter with a guy who's banned on Twitter and YouTube and other places. Let's call him Mr. Jones. I'm not playing the clips for obvious reasons, but I have the transcript. This talk was so confusing and boring and misleading. Jones was clearly unprepared. He took a shower, he shaved, but that's it. It was chaotic rambling. He didn't prepare notes, and he's incapable of having a deep, structured, spontaneous conversation, even after decades in broadcasting. This was an important opportunity for him. He wants to get back onto the big platforms. But Carlson seems genuinely dumbfounded about Jones's rambling and the lack of preparation. If conservatives really think they will benefit from these two guys, they are in trouble. Jones has been on the air since, the mid-1990s, and he is that bad in front of a camera? He's not good with words. He's actually worse than he was in the 2000s or the 1990s. I mean, you would expect somebody to get better over time at a certain job. The GOP needs Jones for the votes. I get that. If he delivers and then vanishes from the face of the earth and gets replaced by someone else, that would be great for Carlson and the Republicans. Jones is a minefield. He's a magnet for unnecessary and preventable trouble. He may have promised his Republican friends to behave in the future, not go overboard, keep the message simple. From a conservative perspective, it may be an acceptable compromise to use Jones for the votes and keep him controlled, but what are the downsides to this strategy? We don't know what dark secrets from the past about Jones we haven't even discovered yet. You're buying the cat in the bag with Mr. Jones. The Capitol entanglement, the Roger Stone stuff. What happens when Julian Assange from WikiLeaks gets extradited to the US and starts talking what he did with Roger Stone in the Trump campaign? What did Jones know, and when did he know it? What if Jones has to make statements under oath and he cannot plead the fifth and performs like he did under oath during the Sandy Hook proceedings? Jones is saying what is trendy with his target audience at any given time. That makes him replaceable. No one really needs him. There are younger people, better looking people, guys with muscles and tattoos. Maybe even the Q shaman will be more famous than him in the future. So promoting certain political trends may help the GOP in the short run, but can create big problems that last for a long time. Pushing women voters and young voters away, lawsuits from voting machine companies, for example, really hit Fox News hard because they just wanted to get into the conspiracy activism game. It's a miracle that Jones wasn't hit with these lawsuits after his reports on the 2020 elections. And so fanaticism has a detrimental effect on people in the audience and their families. Jones is like a bottle of cheap whiskey. Feels familiar, makes you exhilarated for a short while, gives you an ego boost, but it's just toxic ethanol mixed with water and sugar. So, here it says, we're here with the world's most dangerous man, the most censored man in the English language. Jones is the single most censored man in all American history. He was the first media figure in our history to be completely erased in one day. Okay, hang on. I remember the days when social media was not a factor at all. People just rented cheap servers and put up the files of Jones's stuff. Others could download them for free. Then came the file sharing networks. That was so convenient. You just typed in terms in the search bar or visited certain channels and you could then download files peer-to-peer. Not a centralized server, but other people's hard drives. Or you could just pay Jones a few dollars a month to download his stuff. So when social media happened, everyone should have known that this is dangerous. That this is not going to last forever for everyone. These few companies gave Jones and others free file hosting, free infrastructure, free promotion. No more paying for video hosting. This was once 20 or 30 cents per viewing hour. That's one person out there watching your stuff for an hour. Do the math. Former Google engineers said YouTube delivered billions of views with Jones's videos. You know, that was in the old days when even totally radical stuff was possible on YouTube. So YouTube had to manage its own affairs, bring in money through large advertisers. If they didn't want Jones's content on there, these large advertisers, then Jones was out of luck. His stuff was getting more radical because he had to compete with the new guys on social media who were successful with terrible quality conspiracy videos made on the cheap. So, if everybody sounds the same, if everybody just covers the same stuff, how do you stand out? Fancy studio that costs money, or just radicalism. You're just more radical than the other guy. That was how that went. And so the free hosting service ended for Jones. That's what happened. No more free hosting, no more freebies. After billions of views and probably even viewing hours. That's what happened. And he's playing the victim, as always. You don't see him giving free hosting on his own video platform to communists. Is he censoring the left on his privately owned platform? Sure, there is a cartel question with these big social media platforms. But if you want to be a hero and save America, you cannot wait for the courts to figure this stuff out. You have to make do with your own platform and opportunities. If you think the government will regulate social media in a good way, you are sadly mistaken. Best you can get is more influence of mainline Republicans. But the GOP has been around forever, and it's just not good enough. Jones never really made an impact with helping new political talents in the US. Never. Same situation we had during the 90s under Clinton, 2000s with Bush. All this time, all this money wasted by Jones. So then it says the following here in the transcript. And I'll just confess that I first heard of Alex Jones when he questioned the official story behind 9/11, and I, speaking for myself, was deeply offended by this. I didn't take any time to find out what he was saying, but I was bothered by the idea that this defining event in American history, which changed the life of everyone who lived here then, might not actually have unfolded as we were told it did, and that possibility was too destabilizing. And I remember feeling resentment toward Alex Jones for saying that. Well, we know what Fox News said during the Bush years. They had none of this conspiracy stuff. But then, of course, later, years down the line, Fox itself was trying to get into the game, of conspiracy activism to get the voters. According to intelligence experts like Robert Baer, high-placed Russian moles in the FBI and CIA like Robert Hanssen and Aldrich Ames ruined American intelligence operations. That made it much harder to keep track of Al-Qaeda in and outside of the United States. Yet still, Tucker and Jones promote Russia today. FBI agents did investigate the hijackers at the flight schools, but the most promising leads were stuffed into a huge pile and only 2 analysts were tasked with that pile. There may be more Russian moles, even some who are influential in the GOP. Will Carlson go there? Or will he placate the truthers by insinuating 9/11 was a left-wing conspiracy to get them to vote, when he really doesn't like those truthers? And then it says, but fundamentally, Alex Jones is right about a lot of things, and in fact, that's why they don't like him. Well, Jones, over so many years, he quoted many mainstream articles. I mean, this was his radio show back then. He had his staff print out the most interesting stories, or all the stories, posted on the Drudge Report, and on some other platforms, and then he had the stack of news in front of him, and he was just ranting about that material. And if you cover enough interesting mainstream articles on important topics, you will be sort of correct on many things. That's not a remarkable achievement. That's nothing special. But The last real bit of original work from Jones was the Bohemian Grove infiltration in the year 2000. That's almost a quarter of a century ago. And I'm not saying that journalism or investigative journalism has to be exactly like this. You just have to physically enter a place you're not supposed to enter. There are many ways of good journalism, even about, bin Laden, Al-Qaeda. But there wasn't original reporting from Jones, even when it came to Osama bin Laden. He was just quoting other people's stuff. That's what he did. It was always just secondhand information he's been quoting. He was quoting real journalists. He was quoting real investigations. Even a lot of left-wing material or politically neutral material. The left was also reporting about the United States operations in Afghanistan with the Mujahideen to drive out the Russians. Michael Moore did a film on 9/11 in the Bush admin. That was nothing special. Jones never gave you anything special and unique about bin Laden. Jones conveniently overlooked how deeply involved Russia has been in the Islamic world, including radicalism. So this is also something that you will notice in left-wing reporting on these topics. Oftentimes they really do not cover all that Russian stuff. So then it says, but my most accurate prediction going back over a decade was when I read the Rockefeller Foundation Operation Lockstep, and they describe using a virus to bring in world government, to bring in a world medical ID. Okay, is he really directly accusing the Rockefeller Foundation of being involved in a criminal, genocidal conspiracy to use COVID to gain power and cause political changes? Is he really doing that? Right here, right there? Or is he not being serious? Is he just playing a character? Is he just commenting on what others on the web had commented on? Is he willing to defend that accusation in a court of law? Can he present then compelling evidence of this accusation? Or will he crumble again miserably like during the Sandy Hook proceedings, when he tried to throw everybody under the bus? He couldn't remember who in his own company was responsible for the research. He was relying on unstable guests. He didn't bother to do basic fact-checking. See, this is how Jones works. It's a miracle he hasn't been sued much more. And when there is scrutiny, he starts to use his usual techniques. Oh, I wasn't really saying that. I wasn't really claiming that. You're putting words in my mouth. You're twisting me. You're misrepresenting. I'm the victim. I'm always the victim. That's his method. So he wants to make these accusations, like with the Rockefeller thing. He wants to make an accusation, but he doesn't really want to put his money where his mouth is. Okay? I'm not telling you to trust the Rockefellers. I'm telling you to investigate properly, not just read garbage on the internet and just copy it. You see, Lockstep is just a document from 2010. It is one of many, many such documents from around the world anticipating a pandemic. In all kinds of countries, even in Russia, experts have been warning about new pandemics. This is just a very common thing. And if you actually read books on this stuff, you will know about this. It doesn't matter if it's Turkey or France or Russia or any place. There are always experts, there's always biosecurity, and they anticipate pandemics, because of lab accidents, natural spillovers, bioterrorism, biowarfare, the meat markets, open-air meat markets, or these fur farms, with very little safety in place. That's just very, very normal. Are you expecting the Rockefellers to put incriminating stuff into a document like this and putting it out on the internet? Certainly not. But this is the level of Alex Jones's investigative reporting. He just takes stuff that's public. And then he makes these wild accusations. And when there's scrutiny, he starts to squirm and hemming and hawing. And it's all unfair. And it's all a conspiracy against him. That's how he works. So imagine Jones under oath, sued by the Rockefeller Foundation for defamation, him grumbling and hemming and hawing. He gets asked, where in the lockstep document is evidence for my client being involved in a criminal conspiracy involving COVID? Well, I was just commenting on what people were commenting, and powerful circles have done bad things in the past, and that's why I can say whatever I want, and I'm always the victim. Yeah, and then he gets another $1 billion penalty. Then it says the following. They have a working group called the Mad Scientist Group at the Pentagon that works for them. And if you go watch their hour-long, 2-hour-long, 3-hour-long meetings they have on YouTube with all the tops, we're talking hundreds of top scientists, they admit that they're building a post-human world that soon everyone's going to be mind-controlled, that they're going to put smart dust in our food they can electromagnetically control, and they just lay it all out right there. So essentially, Jones does not read any real books on these topics. He has skimmed through YouTube videos and read some bad conspiracy articles on the web. He hasn't even hired real experts to help him. Then it says this. Take what just happened in Israel. Totally tragic. My heart goes out to all that have been killed or lost, loved ones or injured. But there's no way that one of the best intelligence agencies in the world didn't know what was coming. The massive buildup, the 5,000 missiles, the paragliding attacks, all of that. Ooh, case closed, ladies and gentlemen. That is total evidence for a false flag, because, everything is a false flag. Just by saying that, case is closed. He's just perfected his method of being an intelligence analyst. You can solve any case in 5 minutes. But wait, obviously Hamas has always been preparing attacks. They constantly do preparations. This is just what they do. And obviously Israel and others had intel, but the intel didn't indicate a time for an attack or the exact place or the true scale. So you don't have the full picture because you haven't seen the exact reports. And so Israel was concerned with, this may be a distraction, the attack may be somewhere else. And there was the question of how big would the attack be? And of course, you never get the full picture. That's just how it is. But that doesn't sound sensational. That doesn't sound like he's an expert, and he tells things to self-market. So Jones is insinuating what exactly? That Netanyahu let this happen? For what? To make Israel seem vulnerable? To have an unpopular war? To start a bigger war against Lebanon and Iran? A conventional war Israel cannot really win? What is Jones saying? He's an incompetent, run-of-the-mill internet activist. At least Netanyahu had served as a true warrior in anti-terrorism operations. And then it says, Hamas is being funded by Hezbollah, which is Iran. We just had Biden a month ago give $6 billion to Iran, and now the mullahs are bragging that they were behind the attack, Hezbollah funding Hamas. But wait. Your Russian friends do not want to hear that narrative. They don't want that narrative in public because behind Iran, there is Russia. So that's just the reality. Now, obviously, you have this horrendous policy from the Democrats, just delaying the inevitable. They don't want Iran to have nukes. This stuff has been going on for a long time. This policy of sanctions and then less sanctions and another deal and another deal. That is a problem, but mainly behind Iran is Russia. Russia made possible the Islamic revolution in Iran. Doesn't Alex know that, or does he know that and he's just not saying this? So what is he insinuating? That of course everything's a left-wing conspiracy now, including Israel, and it's all left-wing, and the Russians will help you. The Russians will save us, and just vote Republican. This is going to fix everything. Not that simple. And then it says this. And so this is a global movement by the mega corporations, by the BlackRocks and the State Street to the vanguards of control 80+% of world wealth to control our behavior. Well, I agree, that's a scary concentration of power, but BlackRock and Vanguard have significant ties to the Republican Party. Does that mean people shouldn't vote GOP? What's going on? Because this sort of whining, about corporations, that's also what the left is doing. And they don't have any real answers either. And this goes back to the text of Lenin, famous Soviet, saint-like figure to the left. Lenin was whining about Western capitalism and centralization. So how is this special? So then it says, and we were effectively getting a lot of people in the military and the intelligence agencies who were compartmentalized and who tuned into my show and saw my films and read my books and things, and they clicked with it and said, wow, I see all this going on around me. Hold on. British intelligence had started modern conspiracy media in the 1790s to destabilize France. Then it became about destabilizing Germany and Austria. I have done my own very large study on this. I've done my own study on this, and I can tell Jones does not even really understand his own field of activism, his own ideology. There have always been influential circles supporting standard conspiracy material. The John Birch Society was wasting everybody's time. They repeated the key fairy tales about, for example, the Rothschilds taking over Britain. This super tiny family taking over Britain. That old fairy tale. That this is what they kept repeating. And so, moving along here in the transcript, it says this. It was the questioning, the school shooting thing that came later. They went and kind of dredged that up from my past as questioning, and a few times blew that up after I've been deplatformed and said I was deplatformed for that. Here we go again. He's the victim, of course. He trashed the Sandy Hook parents for years, but no, he's the victim in all of this. He was just asking questions and he was just commenting. He tried that in court and failed, but then of course the court was in on the conspiracy. It's always a conspiracy. Everything is a conspiracy against him. So yeah, he's done that for years, and it took years for these lawsuits to happen. But suddenly that this is evidence that he's been treated so unfairly. And then it says, what's so crazy is if you ask just a cross-section of Americans who's responsible for the Sandy Hook massacre of kids at the school, no one remembers the name of the murderer Adam Lanza. They effectively blamed you for a school shooting. Well, that is the very definition of a strawman argument. Nobody claimed or insinuated he was responsible for the shooting or that his reports were as bad as the shooting. For a mass shooting, you get life in prison without parole or the death penalty, or you disappear in a mental institution forever. Jones was simply defaming the Sandy Hook parents as fake actors. There were standard lawsuits, using standard laws, and because he did this to so many individual people, the penalty was really high. If he had done that to a single person or a single couple, the penalty wouldn't have been that high. And then it says, and you go, I didn't kill those kids, and they go, yeah, you did, and so that is what this is targeted to. Who claimed he killed those kids? Is he ready to name specific people? that accused him of killing those kids? Of course not. It is the definition of a stupid strawman argument. He doesn't want to debate the real positions, so he makes up these fake positions so he can debunk them easily. Right? And then it goes on. It goes on like this, and on and on and on. It says, I've never heard you say a single anti-Semitic thing and anti-Israel thing. Why would the ADL be against you? Well, Jones had to rely on banks, other companies to run his business. If he had said outrageous things about Jews, he would have remained a small potato. Recently, he had a guest on who said some really crazy things about Jews. And this whole interview feels like a random episode of Jones's show. It feels like you're listening to the rants of one of his audience members. Many could do the same kind of rambling. It's not hard to do. Blah, blah, globalists, leftists, I'm the victim, blah, blah. It's not hard to do. And then it says this. Klaus Schwab says, we're going to make the world collapse. We're going to have everybody turn against each other. We're going to blame the political classes that we own and control. And then when we're done, we'll bring in our new solution. But first, they have to demolish the cultures and societies that we had before with the fentanyl, with the open borders, the demoralization. Now, I don't trust Schwab either in his ideas, but where did he say these things exactly? Jones keeps on whining how he's been being misquoted and misrepresented, but he does that to others the whole time. If you actually read these Klaus Schwab books, you will find they are written in a really boring fashion, as it's done many, many times by people like Schwab, of course. They don't put incriminating stuff in there. They are deliberately vague, obviously. So then it says this. And then, of course, this $1 billion judgment against you for having opinions, which is insane. Yeah, that thing. But then Jones just keeps on rambling. He uses an analogy of a fisherman and shrimps and a flood. What? He's just waffling. He's going from one thing to the next. And his uncle was an Iran-Contra and this and that. And just, you see the look on Tucker Carlson's face, like, what have I gotten myself into? Who is this guy? What went wrong with this guy? Right? So if you expected something new about this, Sandy Hook thing, the judgment and how he has two options now. He can either pay $85 million over the course of 10 years, I believe it was, or he has to liquidate and just hand over anything he has. Probably he can keep this house in Texas, but that's it. And the situation will follow him forever, unless he leaves the country. He's insinuated that he might go to Mexico or some other country. He's contradicting himself. He doesn't want to go. He's not going anywhere. But he might be going to Russia at some point if the government is really after him at some point for, the Roger Stone WikiLeaks thing, the Capitol thing, and some other things. Then he may go to Russia. He's been offered asylum on Russian TV with the big, Solovyov guy, who's kind of the most famous TV personality over there. Offering Jones political asylum, a luxurious home, big studio. That's what happened. And then it says this. This is really taking a toll on me. Not the fake lawsuits, not the deplatforming. I was already getting exhausted, 6 years ago. And when I married my second wife, who's amazing, I have 3 children with my previous wife, and they're all great children. Okay, hang on. Fake lawsuits? He wants to try again with the Sandy Hook lawsuits? I think not, because this stuff is still ongoing. It's not going away. He's not the great family man he pretended to be for so long. He played a character. His first marriage was a horror show. The details are all over the internet. And the details on his second marriage. how he has wife number 2 surveilled, how they call the cops on each other. It's miserable. Now, of course, marriages can fail and things can get nasty, but then just don't pretend to be this great family guy. Don't self-advertise like this. You know? I mean, if people check out me, I've been happily married for like 15 years. I have 2 kids. I'm not surveilling my wife. We're not calling the cops on each other. So I can mention this from time to time that I'm married. You know, we have a dog, we have 2 kids, great kids. And we all love each other. I can credibly, mention this from time to time. So then it says, I just don't want this burden, this big crew. I love the crew, but I don't want to do this anymore. I said I want to move to the countryside. Well, he can't afford a crew anymore, and he's hired people who were not experts, and he told them what to do, and it ended up in pure incompetence. So his only asset right now is his influence over his audience, the voters. Maybe Jones is doing his last thing right now for the election and then retires. And he's replaceable. Easily. Because there's other people who can do the same job or can do a better job than him. They can waffle. I've seen a YouTube video of scientists and I've read about this lockstep document that's public on the internet. Anyone can do this. Anyone. So if there's no more new content from him, people are going to watch somebody else. Just like that. And then it says, I've spent everything. I'm completely out of money. I'm still hanging on. And then it says, it was more than $1 billion judgment against you for saying something other people didn't like. Oh, come on. Both of these guys have worked in broadcasting for decades. Every noob in the business learns that the company you work for or the company you own is responsible for every single broadcast. There are laws in place, especially when you choose to do investigative reporting. There's a much higher risk of getting in trouble. That's why you have to be careful and professional. He messed up bad. His amateur crew messed up, like amateurs. He still can't admit to this. He blew this. It was him, not the Illuminati. He blew it. He's to blame. So there are 100 ways they could have done proper investigative work on Sandy Hook, but that one false narrative, which the audience wanted and paid for, was against the law. So Jones has proven he's incompetent. If the audience keeps supporting him or people like him, they will get the same results. Do the math. If 3 million people listen to his stuff 1 hour per day, that's 1 billion hours wasted in the time span of a year. That's what we are dealing with. Okay, so he's wasted people's time, he's wasted people's money. What did people get for all the millions and millions of budget which they had? Now, and of course, profit is not, the gross revenue they got in, but for the millions and millions that they had, and what is it, 70, 80 staff that they have? What did the audience get? They got the same stuff that anybody else was doing on the web. The same amateurish conspiracy stuff, but just packaged more nicely, with the fancy looking studio. And, just having this aura of grandiosity because the audience had a certain size. But content-wise, you were getting the same thing. This can be produced for next to nothing because it doesn't have any real value, other than getting votes for the Republicans. And of course, if you remember the golden era of Jones during the Bush admin, you remember Jones's opinion about the Republican Party. And that has completely changed. So now the Republicans are going to save us from the big world conspiracy. That was one of the biggest shifts in his in his overall work. And also his shift on the Russians. He wasn't talking about the Russians from 2000 to 2008. When he mentioned the Russians, it was in a negative way. He talked about the 1999 bombings in Russia, which made Putin a political star. He talked about Putin being a demon, a former KGB guy. He was warning about long-term communist strategies. But that was the golden era. And then in 2008, this all shifted. He made excuses for Russia getting involved in Georgia. And he was making all kinds of excuses then. And this kept escalating. And he had more pro-Russian guests on. And at some point, it was just cheerleading for Russia, for the regime. They got the spirit of 1776. They do it better than we do. They're going to save us because we're an occupied country, and all that nonsense. Now, of course, he's always stated that he's not under control by the Russians. He's not taking Russian money. It's just, how dare you insinuate anything like this? But recently, and you can find the details on this channel here, recently a major influencer in Europe, specifically in Germany, got busted. He was a very, very famous guy, super anti-American, very much pro-Russia. And he had a sponsoring contract with a Russian front company for 600,000 euros for a single book project. And he had many projects over the years. And so this guy took the Russian money. And he said many of the same things that, Jones has said and Tucker Carlson has said. Many of the same stuff. And when this German guy, this Mr. Seipel, when he was confronted on the radio, he was just asked, have you ever taken Russian money? And he was outraged. How dare you say this? How dare you ask this question? Are you crazy? This is crazy to ask me that question. And now we know what was really going on. So, we at this point, we just cannot tell if these two, Carlson and Jones, if these two take Russian money. We don't know if they have weird contracts and if they have weird, contact people. We just don't know at this point. But they sound just like the people who have these connections. They sound just like the people who take Russian money. So it may be the case that the Russians got these two for free. That is entirely possible. So yeah, that was my analysis on what I think was the worst interview of 2023. Check out my ebook on ancient intelligence networks in Enlightenment and communism. Find the link in the description below. Subscribe to this channel, like this video, leave a comment, and spread this on social media.